On this episode of Behind the Build, we're going to be covering rockwork techniques. This technique exploration will hopefully inspire you with your future build, so feel free to use any of the designs that you see in your own stuff. And of course, continue to explore and experiment with them too. So let's get started. One of the easiest rockwork techniques can be done by using any style of burp or lerp part. No, please do not burp on your MOCs. Burp and lerp stand for big or small ugly rock pieces. So use your big ugly rock pieces to lay out where your rocks will go. You can straight up just use these parts, or you can detail them with cheese slopes, plates, tiles, leaves, or anything really. Just decorate it in a way that looks natural and visually pleasing. You can also use burps as a base to build around. Whether you're making a large mountain or a small rocky ledge, you can easily use burps to map out the rough height and size of your rocky area. This can be very useful and helpful to do. Mapping out the area of your build like this before you start will help you get a general idea of the MOC's size and its overall composition. And it'll also bring any possible problems to your attention really early in the design so that they won't become a problem later on as you're building, and you can change them right away. Once you've laid down the burps or lerps, start placing slopes in any size and shape onto the burps themselves, and use them as a kind of guide to structure your rockwork as you go. And also feel free to branch out and not follow the exact shape of the burps too. Anything goes. This specific technique works well in helping you to make organic looking rockwork and get a fairly sound idea of what the final shape of the rocks will look like when you're finished. Placing the slopes onto the burps and lerps does require a little bit of trial and error, but just layer them in a way that looks organic and flows naturally. Never forget to think outside the box when you're building too. We just spoke about placing burps upright. Well, what about placing them upside down? This MOC by AFOL MC Lego Boy perfectly shows us the unique design you can achieve by placing burps on their side instead of the traditional upright way. So while you're building, ask yourself, could I possibly place this piece upside down or on its side? Is there a unique element I could use in this build? What if I tried this? Ask these questions, experiment and play, and you never know what you might discover. Another technique, and my design of choice when I'm building rockwork, is to grab these specific slope parts. 1x2 slopes, 1x3 slopes, cheese slopes, 2x2 slopes, 2x3 slopes, and both types of 2x2 corner slopes, as well as any sort of various lengths of plates in the same colors that your rocks will be as well. Of course, the color that you use will vary depending on the landscape that you're building, but be sure to use colors that look natural. And don't use too many colors either, otherwise it might become a little visually distracting. Anyway, once I have these parts, I simply build up layer by layer and add in support parts behind it. The color of the support parts doesn't really matter, as it'll be covered up as the building process continues. Personally, I find using burps as a frame kind of limits me, but really, that's just my personal preference. I have a lot of LEGO friends who feel the exact opposite when they're building, so be sure to use the design that works for you. One thing to keep in mind with this design is that sometimes your colors can peek through the gaps in the slopes, like we see here. The easiest way to fix this problem is to just keep checking in as you build, so that you can fix as you go. Or a simple failsafe, build in a layer of bricks behind your slopes of the same color as your rocks. If you want to continue to advance your designs, look into using SNOT techniques. SNOT, of course, stands for studs not on top. It's where you place bricks on their side or upside down so that the studs are not on top. Use any type of SNOT part, from brackets to bricks with studs on their sides, to place slopes upside down or on their side. SNOT rocks are a great way to add height. Sometimes building with the methods that we've discussed before, you can have a tendency to take up a lot of room. Like this example here, we see each additional layer moves the design further and further backwards, which can be an issue if you're a little bit limited on space. So by using SNOT rocks, you can basically build a vertical straight wall and not have to worry too much about this issue. We see this done on this MOC here. Now let's take a look at a rockwork technique from the LEGO AFOL community. This is a MOC by a builder called Infomaniac, and his rockwork technique really rocks. This utilizes a whole bunch of different techniques that we've discussed already in this video, but it's even cooler to see multiple being used at once. They flow very nicely into each other, and seeing multiple different techniques used in conjunction is visually very pleasing. So don't be afraid to use multiple rockwork techniques together in the same build. One of my favorite things in this diorama is the introduction of a dark tan line along the middle of the MOC itself. This very much mirrors the different colors of layers of rock that you might see in a quarry or a mine. It's very accurate to the real world, and it helps you introduce a nice accent point onto the MOC as well. While this is only really believable on larger scale rockwork like we see on this MOC here, it is possible to see variations in color in rocks anywhere. So be sure to think about that in your future builds. Also be sure to take a look around you in the real world. How do rocks naturally form? How does grass grow around it? What colors are the rocks? Take inspiration from the real world and put that into your MOC. It'll make things look natural, realistic, and awesome. In conclusion, remember that with all the techniques we've discussed so far, be sure to properly layer and support your designs so that everything is structurally strong. You don't want things to be too delicate and break as you're building. And that's it for my guide on LEGO Rockwork techniques. If there's something else you'd like to see me cover in an episode of Behind the Build, let me know in the comments and I'll do an episode about it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode of Behind the Build.